All right, one more time, and
This is why I'm not in front of the camera. Okay. Hello, my name is Jon Cassar. I'm the executive producer and kind of full-time director on the Orville. Welcome to Planetary Diary, the making of a fan series.
hey everybody, welcome to a Planetary Diary. I'm your host, Eric Moran, and today we have a really big special guest. This gentleman here is a two-time Emmy winner. This man has done so much in the business, and he is the executive producer and sometimes director of the Orville. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to introduce to you my special guest, Jon Cassar. Hey, how's it going, Jon?
Dude, I can't be happier to be here right now in these COVID times.
Well, Jon, I want to get right into the nuts and bolts of this interview, and I want to start right off. Tell me a little bit about how you got started in the business.
Well, it's funny because it's what you love. I think sometimes when you're a kid and you don't know you can make a career out of it. And I was just one of those kids that was just crazy about movies. I mean, just fanatical about movies. In fact, I found some old notebooks when I was like 13 and 14 years old, and I'd write every movie I saw. And I realized at 13 years old, I was like, I was seeing like The Godfather and all these like huge movies. And of course they were influencing me somehow. And, I went on my life and I went to school and I was going to be an architect because I had a few drawing skills and all that was great. Because at the time, especially it's so different than now, now you've got so many film schools out there. At the time, there weren't that many. So no, I never once thought, hey, I could do this for a living. It was just something I loved. And then I found out that you can. And, I was living in Canada at the time, and there was a film school. And it was actually not even film school. It was radio and television at the time. And I took a course there. And I took a 2-year course. And, of course, shot to the top of my class because I was fanatically already loving, entertainment and movies and watching movies and making my own little movies and all that kind of stuff. And then from there I started working, and so you need a background. You can't just drop into it. Although I must say, I think for kids nowadays that want to make movies, they've got way more advantages than we ever had. And mostly what you have the advantage of is the audience. When I was a kid and I made a movie, my 4 family members got to see it. That was it. My audience was 4 people, and they went, yeah, good, very good, whatever. And now, I mean, you virtually, and this is not even an exaggeration, you can make a movie in the morning, and by the evening, you can have 1 million people seeing it online. That is unbelievable to me. And that doesn't make it easier to make a good movie. It just makes it easier for you to get your work out there. And so, you still have to have a good story. And that's my biggest, not complaint, but that's my biggest disappointment when I see people that are making movies and then, they're not really thinking, they're just trying to make a cool movie or they're copying something. They're not telling an original story, and they're not telling sometimes a good story. The good story is everything. It's not what your camera is or how much you shoot or, how expensive your sets are in your wardrobe and what great actors you have. All of that is okay, but at the end of the day, without a good story, you've got nothing. So, again, that's the advantage of kids now, I think, than we didn't have. But I went to school and then started working in the business. And I was a camera operator for the first third of my career. So that's my background is camera. I was a camera operator. I had a thing called a Steadicam, which was this, stabilizing device that was very new. I was one of 20 people in the world that could do it at the time. So it was really, really new. Now, of course, hundreds of people can do it, but so that's sort of my way in, and that got me from a television world to the film world too. That was my transition to doing feature films, not just television shows. And then I was always that guy that wanted to be the director. I was always the camera operator going, one day I'm going to direct. And I was on a show called Forever Night. It was like a vampire show. It was like kind of based on the Anne Rice novels loosely. And I was a camera operator on that show, and I was helping a lot of the directors because that's kind of what I wanted to do. And they finally gave me a chance. The actors, said, give this guy a chance. The producers wanted to give me a chance. And I did that. That was my first show. And then, after that, it was still had to go back to operating because, all the people that were saying, we can't give you a job, you don't have any shows. I would go to those same people and go, here's my show. And they would say, oh, well, we can't give you that because you only have one show. So, it's a bit of a process. But then once I started, about a year after that, even less, I started directing and I haven't looked back since. Knock on wood. I've been, very fortunate. I've got a lot of great shows. I've worked with great producers. I've had some great actor friends, Kiefer being one of them, Seth being the other. So, it's work. It's not an overnight thing. I didn't start directing till I was kind of in my late 30s, almost 40. So it takes a while, and it was okay because all those years I spent as a camera operator were great because I learned everything there was to know about the business. And I got to see everybody working from the crew level, not just the producer level. And so that's probably a really long-winded answer to your question, but there it is.
No, and that was good. And bouncing right off of that, what were some of the biggest challenges you had facing, not just as a producer, but as a director? Like, what were some of your biggest challenges?
Well, the hardest part is getting people to believe in you. That's the toughest part, and first of all, you have to believe in yourself. And I don't know if I was just boldly optimistic, but I never thought that I couldn't do this. When I started my journey into the film and television world, I kind of knew right away it was going to happen. It didn't happen as quickly as I would have liked, but it did happen eventually. So that's part of it. And then the other thing is that you have to constantly convince people you can do it. And there's no way of doing that but by doing a good job. So, getting my first director gig was great, but if somehow I muffed that and I didn't do a good job, I wasn't going to get a second one. And so you're kind of living on the line all the time. As they say, you're only as good as your last project. It's kind of true. You're constantly, everything you do, you're being judged on, and people have to trust you. Once they get that trust, it's great because they tell other people. And that's how this business works. So the producers of Forever Night told the producers of Kung Fu, The Legend Continues. And that was kind of my second show. And they loved what I was doing. And David Carradine and I got along. And so boom, they gave me a bunch of episodes. And that led to somebody else. And that led to the Baywatch guys, the Baywatch Nights guys. I did Baywatch Nights. It wasn't even Baywatch. It was a spin-off show. But the funny thing is when I tell people that, they're like, oh my God, he did Baywatch and Baywatch Nights. What the hell is that? Well, that producer knew a guy named Joel Surnow. And Joel Surnow was doing a show called La Femme Nikita. And then I did the pilot of that. And that was big for my career. And not only that, Joel's next show was a little show called 24. And so it just goes to show you that I love telling people that because I did Baywatch Nights, I ended up on 24. It's very weird, but it's kind of how that worked. So the toughest part for anybody, even as a camera operator, was the same thing. It's like you're doing the work, you have to do it well, and you have to kind of be the top of your game. And then you got to convince people to hire you because it's a lot of money. They're spending a lot of money on you even as a camera operator, but as a director even more because they're putting millions of dollars in your hands to make this show. So getting that trust is difficult, and that's going to be everyone's biggest stumbling block is getting people to trust you.
I was watching all those shows, Forever Night, La Femme Nikita, Baywatch Nights, all those shows. And it's funny because I'm like, wow, you paid your dues. And that's, to me, that's a major thing. Like I've come to find out when I've talked to other filmmakers, producers, it's all about paying your dues. So here you are paying your dues. You've been hitting the coals for a long time. And so you finally get your Emmy. Now, how did that feel when you got your first Emmy?
Yeah, it was, easily one of the best nights of my life. My family was with me, which was great. And I was among some of my best friends at the time, which was Joel and Kiefer and my crew and all those guys. And so it was really great. And you got to remember that, we sat in 4 Emmys before that being nominated for Best Show, and we never won, and I was nominated one other time for director and I never won. So I think by the time we got to that one, we figured we're not going to win this. I mean, usually newer shows win it. 5-year-old shows usually don't win best television show. It usually doesn't work that way. But we had a great 5th season. I think the writers were at the top of their game. I think the crew was gelled by then. The actors, we had a great cast. And so I kind of think we deserved it. I mean, we're up against some really big competition back then. We were like up against West Wing and Lost and all these, big shows. And so it was a surprise, I guess, in one way, because we were so used to not winning it that we were just like, yeah, we're not going to win again. But it's fun to go. I mean, it's always great to be nominated, and it's such a fun night. But and then when they said my name, I mean, are you kidding me? That was the most exciting day of my life. And then on my way up, I got to hug Kiefer, which was fantastic. That made it all so great. And so it was really a fun night. And the funny thing is, it's such a that's the glamour of Hollywood that everyone sees, but they don't realize that that I was up till whatever 1, 2 o'clock celebrating, and I think I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I think I had 2 hours sleep because the next day I was shooting. So it's like it was a Sunday night, and Monday we were like shooting. So the glamour went away really quick. Put the Emmy on my desk and put my work clothes on and went to work the next day. And I think we did a big second unit. If I remember right, I think it was the blowing up of the bus. Yeah, I think that's what it was. It was the blowing up of the bus in front of the LA concert hall, the Disney Hall. And that's what we were doing that next day or that next night. So yeah, it's one of those things. It's great. It reminds you, how fun it is to be with everybody, but you get back to work right away. And really the work part is the big part of the business. The awards and the glamour and all that is like the very, very small part.
Well, I mean, you have to realize, I mean, for a lot of people who don't know about 24, 24 is a show basically a whole season is devoted for a 24-hour period, and all these things ensue, dealing with the president, dealing with the government, all this intrigue and all, and it was a great show. It's groundbreaking. So to be able to be a part of that team and having accolades being presented to you, awards being presented to you because all that hard work, it speaks in volumes.
So I got 2 that night. Kiefer got 2 that night because Kiefer he was also a producer on the show. Okay. So as a producer, you get an Emmy for best show. So we got 2, Kiefer got 2, all the writers and producers got 1, and then we always won a lot of technical awards every year from the very beginning. I think we won multiple music awards. Sean Callery, unbelievable score. Was we always called him our secret weapon because he just elevated the tension to a place that made it hard to sit and watch sometimes. And so he won multiples. Our sound guys won multiple awards. So we were used to winning the technical awards, but we never won sort of the big and for Fox it was the first time Fox ever had a show for best drama win. First time in their whole their history. First time they had best actor and first time they had best director. We broke all those 3 were the first time for Fox.
So as a producer, as a director, what are the key elements that you look for when you're filming and producing? What are some of the key elements you look for in wanting to put out good story and being able to tell a proper good story?
Well, I'm the guy that gets the story and then has to, make it real. So I always compare myself to sort of, a construction site and you're building a building, someone puts a blueprint together and it's just lines and words on a piece of paper and gives it to the contractor and says, okay, now make a building that people can, live in. Okay, from this piece of paper, we have to make a building. Well, I'm kind of the same way. I'm given that script and they go, okay, great. Now go out there and make like an hour of television that people want to see. Here's paper with words on it, but now make it real. So that's kind of my job. Now, I was part of I was never part of the writing. We had fantastic writing team, one of the best writers rooms I think I've ever worked with. They're fantastic. And so we really did some, they did some great work. It was a high wire act. You've got to know that, because we did 24 episodes, people don't understand this. We had 3 weeks off between when we finished the last show and we started the next season. We had 3 weeks.
Wow.
So in 3 weeks, you can't write 24 episodes. You can maybe write 1. Yeah. And so basically, we went from year to year. We just finished. And while I was shooting the last episode, directing the last episode, because I directed almost all the last episodes, when I was doing that, they were already coming to me and saying, okay, here's what we got for next season. And I'd be like, guys, we've been working on this season for 11 months. Let me just finish this episode, and then let's talk about what we're doing in 3 weeks when we start the next season. So because of that 24, not 22, those 2 extra episodes, we virtually worked all year round for 7 straight years. And so the writing team were miraculous, because anybody will tell you that the writing is the biggest part, and it takes months to do. And these guys were writing it as they went along. So how we started in episode 1 and how we ended in episode 24, they had a rough idea, but no one knew where the twists and turns were going to be until they wrote them. So basically they would write, and then they'd give it to me, and I'd always have an opinion one way or the other. And mostly I would be involved in all the action, and I would sort of grab that action and make it my own, or make it fit a location, or escalate it a little bit to make it bigger than what we had done before. Every time you do another season, you got to be better than the season before. So all the action got bigger and bigger and bigger as we went. So that's sort of the way that worked. So it was all on them. It was miraculous what they did. And then, my job was to say, okay, so that's what you wrote. Okay, let's go out. You wrote a plane landing on a freeway. Okay, that's not going to be easy. And so, but I got to tell you, I'm very proud of the fact that I don't think once, maybe once or twice, but we never said no to the writers. We were very proud. The production side, the producer, my production designer, Joseph Hodges, who was amazing, Rodney, my cinematographer, it was such a great group of people that would just what did they write this week? What do they want to do? Oh my God, that's impossible for the budget. How the hell are we going to do this? So there was this great kind of excitement every week to do it. And this is a true story. They might deny it, but I know there's a true story. When they wrote the plane lands on the freeway, because they knew how difficult it was, I was sitting in my office, and a hand kind of came through the open door, threw the script on my couch, and ran away. And I was like, okay, there's something in here that's going to be difficult to do, obviously. So yeah, and you know what? We figured it out. And it's not like we said no. We'd have to make adjustments. Like for that particular one, the wings were snapping off the lights, on the highway.
Okay.
And that would have cost so much more money, and that would have been difficult to do. And then, so we figured it out, and we said, look, do you mind if the lights don't get knocked off the highway? They're like, yeah, whatever. If you can land this friggin' plane on the highway, then we'll take it. And so we did. And I couldn't tell you what episode it was and what season it was, but we did. We somehow made it work. We did it in chunks, and we made it work. So there was a pride in that for the show. And I think that pride came through. I think it constantly got better and better and better. We had some seasons that were a little softer than others for whatever reasons, but we never stopped trying. I mean, right up to when we did that one in London, we were still, making 24. We loved making that show. And so it was really fun to be part of.
So take us through what it was like in you starting off working on the Orville.
Well, let me give you a little background. First of all, after 24, I became a producer director, and that means that you're on a show from the very beginning, and you direct most of the episodes, not all of them, but you direct a lot of them, and you oversee all the other directors, and you're a producer. So you're dealing with all the money and everything else that you have to do, and casting and everything. So I had kind of moved into that stage of my career where I was just doing, I wasn't doing what's called one-offs. And when you start your career, it's like, okay, you do an episode of West Wing, and then you get on a plane the next day, and you go and you do an episode of Lost in Hawaii, and then you get on a plane and you come back and you do an episode of, that's what, and that's like, I would say 80%, maybe 90% of the directors working, that's what they're doing. They're going from one show to another. What had happened is that when shows became more serialized, like Us and Lost, suddenly it made sense to have somebody of continuity. If you're doing a procedural where every week it's a different crime, then it's fine. You can hire you have 24 episodes, you hire 24 directors. But when you're doing a story that's really, and in our case, when you're doing one day, it was like the whole season was just one day. It's nice to have somebody of continuity for the actors, for the crew. And so I became the guy that did every second set of episodes on 24. So I think I did 70 by the end of it, which is, I think some kind of record of one guy doing 1 hour drama. It's a lot of episodes out of 204, I did 70 of them as a director. Wow. So I was doing producing, directing. So I wasn't really taking single jobs. But then Brandon Braga, who is one of the main writers on the Orville and producers, and I worked with him on on 24. And by the way, he's got a great horror movie called Books of Blood on Hulu right now.
I just checked that out.
He directed.
Yeah,
I got to see this movie. He did a great job. It's fantastic. But anyway, so Brandon calls me out of the blue and says, I'm doing this show called The Orville. Again, I had no idea what that would be because I know the Orville brothers, but he tells me about it and he says, come in, meet some producers, meet Seth, and see if you want to do one episode of this. I'm like, I don't really do one episodes anymore. I'm a producer director. And I was just about to go to Italy to do Medici, which is a Netflix series about the famous Renaissance family. I was about to go do that. He said, but just come and meet with us and see if you'd be interested. And so I went in there and they told me all about it. And I saw some of the costumes and some of the sets because they were shooting already. And I was like, wow, this is really kind of cool. And then I was like, wait a second, isn't this a comedy? And they said, yeah, it's a comedy. I said, okay, but like I'm the king of torture and like, dark drama. I mean, 24 is a dark drama. And you want me to do a comedy, which is kind of strange. I've never been offered that before. And they said, yeah, but we don't want it. We don't want comedy directors. We want drama directors because we want to play all of this straight up, as a high-end sci-fi series. And the comedy is just kind of incidental in a way. So we don't want to play the comedy. And by the way, you've got Seth Macfarlane, who's the king of comedy. And so he'll help you out there. And I said, you know what? I got to do this. I'll do the one episode. I think it'll be really fun to do one episode of this. So I went to Italy. Before I went to Italy, I did the show and went to Italy and did Medici. So I did my one episode. I had a great time. I loved working with Seth. He's a perfectionist. And there's a part of that I loved, always try to make it better, which is my mantra. I think everybody's job is to make it better, not to just get the script, but to always make it better. So we had a great time. And I remember he said, dude, I love working with you. And, if we come back for a second season, because this was first season, I was only doing the one episode. And he said, if you come back, you got to come direct. And I virtually jokingly said, okay, if I come back, I want to do like a lot of them. I want to do a whole bunch of them. And he said, okay, you're on. And it was like a joke, while you're shooting. I went off to Italy and I did my 6 months in Italy and did the Medici, had a great time doing that. And then, I got a call and said, look, Seth wants you. We got a second-year pickup. Seth wants you to come and be producer director and, do a bunch of episodes. And I was like, okay, let's do it. I had so much fun doing it. And I got to tell you, honestly, it was LA and, knock on wood, not knock on wood, but I was lucky that 24 was in LA for years. So I got to go home and sleep in my own bed every night. But, I did right after 24 ended, I can't even remember. I think it was almost 4 or 5 years and I had done like 3 weeks in LA. So for 5 years after 24, I was on the road. I did the 24 spinoff in Atlanta. I did the 24 in London. I did a Western movie with Kiefer in Calgary, in Canada. I did the Medici in Italy. I mean, I was all over the place. So someone saying, look, this is a full-time job and you get to live in LA and go home and see your family, that's kind of cool. So I took it on and it was like, I knew it was going to be a challenge. It's not an easy show. It's a very, very difficult show because the standards of it, that Seth puts on it are so high. This is not just your, average comedy dramedy. He really wants the sci-fi of it all to be as good as his favorite show in the world, which is Star Trek, the original Star Trek and Next Generation. And so he had very high standards and I dug that right away. So again, and we got along and I got to tell you, we kind of direct side by side. We work side by side. We see things the same way, and so it's been a really great partnership and I've loved being on the show. I really, really have.
Well, I mean, again, with second season to me, I loved the first season. Second season took it up a notch. And it was funny because I was just talking to a couple different people about it and some of the fans. And what amazes me, like you were watching the episode 1 minute, you're thinking it's going to go in one direction and then it goes dark. And I'm just sitting there like, wait a second, I thought it was going to be like that. And that's how generally the season was like, they had their ups and downs where 1 minute everything is, you're going to think it's going to go one way and then they up the stakes again. And so by the time the end of the season, it was just like mind blown and all, and everybody is like so jacked for season 3.
Well,
so,
I think I mean, honestly, from what I know, and I wasn't around the first season much. I only did the one episode, but obviously I saw the shows and heard all the stories, but it was more what he wanted. I mean, that's Seth molded the second season more to what he wanted, So there was a little less comedy. The comedy wasn't as broad. He dealt with some social issues, which he always loved about Star Trek. He loved that they dealt with those issues all the time. And so he really sort of molded it. I think season 2, he's a little more proud of season 2. Not that I'm sure he's proud of season 1 too, but I'm just saying that to me, I think it was closer to his heart what he wanted the show to be, and you'd have to talk to him to get the real deal. And if you thought season 2 was an upgrade from season 1, I can't tell you, and I can't wait till you guys see season 3, because I'm telling you, it's gonna blow your minds. It went to a completely new level, and we're kind of halfway through episode 5 when we ended. We virtually dropped everything in March when everyone sort of shut down, and I haven't been back to the studio. I've talked to Seth. The good news is our visual effects department is in full swing, and they're still working, and our editors are still working on the shows that we had finished. It's only Seth and I directing this year, so that's kind of something. And we're really having fun doing that. And, you're not trying to teach a director every time they come in what we do. It's like, I know what we do. He knows what we do. We just do it. And so the whole schedule is a bit of this episode, a bit of that episode. It's not like we're finishing one episode at a time. We're kind of all over the place with the episode, which is good because when you're in one set, you can maybe use it for another episode, that kind of thing. We're doing a little bit of that, probably a little more once we get back, whenever we get back. And so the shows we've done are just spectacular. I mean, we've seen them in rough cut already. We're seeing the CG coming in every day, better and better and better. And you thought that battle scene was great in Identity 2. That's just the tip of the iceberg for what we're doing now. It's feature film. It's unbelievable. And they're huge episodes because now that we're on Hulu, we don't have a time restriction, which is, again, one of those things that drove Seth crazy, because Seth isn't the kind of guy that writes like an hour and 10-minute episode just so he can cut it down to 40 minutes. He writes an episode that's complete, and he wants all of those pieces to still be in the episode. A lot of television, you write a lot and then you just slice it all up and you cut it all down. And even 24, I mean, my goodness, sometimes there'd be 15 minutes of a show no one ever saw. I think when we did our deleted scenes thing on the Blu-ray, we'd have like 100 scenes in there that nobody ever saw because we'd cut so much. Well, Seth doesn't like that. He likes to I wrote the script. It's like a movie. Every scene matters. And so he didn't want to cut. So part of it now I'm telling you, we're giving you 1-hour episodes. That's 20 minutes more than what you were seeing before. So now you've got it's 20 minutes more of content. It's a show and a half of what you were watching before. Most shows are 42 minutes, 43 minutes. Now they're 60 minutes. So they're massive. I mean, they're like little movies. We always call them little movies because of how hard they are. But I'm just telling you right now, and this isn't hype, and I screened a few of them again the other day. They're really, really good. Really good. It's so exciting. And the ones we have lined up, I'm just so excited about shooting because they're just all great scripts.
Well, you got me very excited. I mean, I've been already excited. I mean, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's funny because I was talking to Tom Constantino about how, you got fans out there who's like, he's going to get canceled, the show. And, people like myself, you got Egotastic Fun. We're like, oh, no, that's not happening. And I find it funny because it's one of the more positive shows that everyone likes and loves at the same time. And it just amazes me because, again, people don't realize we're in the quarantine and that it's not just the Orville. Everything is shut down right now. And so I'm just like, once people get over that idea that, it's not canceled. Even Seth, I remember Seth coming out recently saying, hey, we're coming back. Right now we got.
Well, I mean, look, it's scary. I mean, we saw something happen this year that has never happened in the television industry. Shows that were picked up, shows that got the green light to go another season, and then they got unbelievably canceled. Stumptown was one of them. They announced about 3 or 4 more last week. And that is horrible. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I always try to look at it from, the fact that these are people that are working to feed their families and have a life. And so, when you cancel a show, that's 150 to 200 people, depending on the show, that are now out the street without a job. And so and now, of course, even worse, because there's no jobs out there right now because we're not back up to full production. So that's a new thing. So it is scary. I mean, I think we were lucky that we were at least, almost halfway, because we're 5 out of 11. So, I think that helps that you've got so much invested already. It's hard to let it go. But like some of those other shows, if you don't start the season, you haven't lost any money yet. So they got canceled. And after they were renewed, after everyone was told, it's okay, you've got a job for the next year of your life, suddenly they read on deadline, guess what? Your show's canceled, you're out of work. So it's a bit of a scary time. And we know we're coming back. We're saying we're coming back. But hey, I could read deadline tomorrow and find out we're not coming back. I don't think that's true. But that's what's happened to other people. So nothing's for sure right now. We're just living in a very uncertain time.
We have a lot of people in the fandom that basically strongly supports this show. And that's another thing I want to ask you about. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the fan base from everything from doing like the Orville experience, for example? You got shows like Eagle Tastic Fun Time. You got fan films like what I'm working on right now and everything else. How do you feel about that? Like, did you expect it to be, the response to be so positively overwhelming, or how?
Well, let me go back a bit, because I'm a bit of a pioneer in this world, because I was when I was on 24, every producer kind of deals with something else. And in our case, Tom kind of is dealing with the social media more than sort of anybody else. He's kind of taken that under his wing. But on 24, that was me. And on 24, it was just started. I mean, I remember the boards, and people would go and talk about shows. And I was like, wait a second. This is a main line into our fans. This is fantastic. So I would go on there, and I would go, and I was the only one at the time. None of the writers were on yet. And I was like going back to the writers going, you know what they love? They love this. Let's do a little more of this. So, I mean, right away, I was one of the first people that goes, let's listen to the audience. Like, we have an opportunity that nobody's ever had in television before or films, to get people to tell you what they like, and you can then put it right into your show. I mean, blessing. Not to mention, look, I'm a fan. I'm a crazy fan. I'm a lunacy. You should see my collections of stuff that I have. It's nutty. Like I've been like that since I was a kid. If I wasn't doing this, I'd be you. So it's like, you got to understand, I love this stuff. So I am open arms to fans. I will give anything. I will do anything for the fans, because that's what, first of all, keeps us on the air. And at the end of the day, that's what we're doing it for. So 24 was the same thing. And then we had this accident on 24, which was absolutely fantastic, where we actually put a real phone number on one of the phones. And it was virtually on the screen for, I think, less than a second. You had to find it, freeze it, which wasn't easy with VHS. You had to freeze it and then read the number. And it was the phone that belonged to the prop guy. They were doing an insert, and they quickly just got a shot, and that was it. And he came to me, we were shooting one night, and he goes, dude, my phone won't stop ringing. And I said, why? He goes, because, the episode just there, we were shooting, and we'd always be shooting and it would be airing at the same time. And he said, last night's episode aired, and ever since it aired, this phone has not stopped. Actually, it wasn't even it was that night. He said, just like this, it was in the East Coast. It just finished in the East Coast, and ever since that show finished, my phone is ringing off the hook. I'm getting calls from all over America. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, well, here, answer one. So he gives me the phone, and I answer, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And it's like somebody out of New York that just saw the show, and I start talking to them, and I'm like, okay, this is madness. This is nuts. And so, and then, we're shooting, and it aired on the West Coast, and I took the phone down, and I said, here, Carlos Bernard, talk to one of the fans. And so this crazy thing happened where this phone, the prop guy couldn't use it anymore. That number just became, it virtually rang 24 hours a day.
Wow.
And then then obviously, because it always aired in America first, it started to air overseas. So now we're getting calls from England. We're getting calls from Israel. We started getting calls from Russia. There was a map in my room where we were just like pinning where we got all the calls from. and we were answering them. We were talking to people, and I would say, hey, there's prop guys beside me. Here, ask the prop guy some questions. And so it became this thing. So trust me, I'm a pioneer in like doing this stuff. And as far as Orville goes, we've had, you know, Seth is a big believer in it, and you have to have the head of the show love to give out to the fans, and he does. And, you know, that costs everyone a lot of money, that fan experience, and it was all for the fans. We might have been able to do another episode, you know, if it wasn't for that. So it goes to show you, that was, and that's, Tom and his people did an incredible job on that, putting that together, and it was a one-of-a-kind thing. I've been to Comic-Con for years now, and it was pretty spectacular. I mean, it was, if you were a fan of a show, there was nothing better than the Orville experience, I just don't think. You know, I mean, we virtually emptied out our studios and put it there for everyone to see. And then the fact that, you know, Seth wanted to come with all the cast, and we all ended up there, and I was hanging around all day, and Tom was hanging around all day, and my son, who's a concept artist, Lexus, who does all the, you know, the concept art, he was there, and, you know, and then Brooke was there from Post, and we just wanted to be there. We wanted to revel in the limelight of the fans loving this show so much that we just want to be part of it. So, and we'll continue to do that. We're big on social. We're putting stuff out there. You know, for that weekend, I put out a whole bunch of pictures from second season. I can't put out pictures from first season because we changed a lot of things this year that we don't want to give away yet until you see the show. And so I put out like all my behind the scenes pictures for the fans. And so, you know, we know how important you guys are. You're very important to us. Very important.
Well, you know, and we greatly appreciate you guys as well. So I want to ask you this, as someone who's a filmmaker myself, and there are a lot of other filmmakers out there, young filmmakers, filmmakers that want to maybe do original, whether it's original pieces or pieces off of ideas from what they've seen on TV or even the Orville 24. What advice would you give to any aspiring filmmakers or producers that want to possibly break in?
Okay, well, and you should know that I'm in development right now too. So part of my deal at Fox is not only do the Orville, and this is what I've been doing when I'm not shooting. I'm also developing television shows. So I've already sold a few to 20th, which is very exciting, and now we're trying to get them to networks. But anyways, I'm telling you that because almost everyone's first question when you're trying to sell a show to a studio or a network, their first question is, why now? Why does someone want to see this show? So before you start spending money and designing your show, answer those two questions. You know, so you're doing, let's say, a Western. Why is it going to be your Western that I want to see? And what's the relevance of today? You know, it's got to somehow hook into what's happening in the world. The best shows always do. And so before you even start, answer those two questions. You got to answer those, and they have to be good answers. Why now, and what's the relevance of the show, right? Whether it's a short or a feature, whatever it is. So that's important. And then you've got the disadvantage of there's been so many movies out in the world, thousands. There's been so many television shows. Now there's streamers that just like endless content. Why am I going to watch your show? What is it about your show that's going to be different than everybody else's? So is it something you do with the camera? You're going to do something cool with the camera. Is it a story you're telling that no one knows about? This is a story that has to be heard. That's what I want to see. When I'm watching TV, if someone, you know, and I'm watching all the new shows and someone puts out a show and I watch and go, I can name you 3 other shows that were out before this one that are 10 times better. Why am I watching this? You know, why? I don't even know why. So that's got to be your driving force, is I'm going to make this better than anybody else's. You try for that. I'm going to make this so original that people have to see it. You know, people are going to talk about it and go, oh my God, have you seen that? You got to see this. You know, it's like what's happening online all the time. It's like Social Dilemma. It's like, you got to see that documentary, you know, because they dealt with a subject matter no one had dealt with before. So that's your first thing. And then the second thing that is the most important thing of all is like, put it on paper, write a script. Don't try to wing it. It doesn't work. And basically that script is everything. That's your Bible. And it's got to be good. You've got to tell a good story. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think I'm a great, fantastic director. I don't think I'm fancy with what I do. I don't think you look at my show and go, ooh, look at that cool shot. Look at that, like, ooh, one shot deal. And that's not what I do. What I think I do well, and because I'm a TV lover and a TV watcher and a movie lover and watcher, is I think I tell a really good story. And so at the end of the day, you can have the fanciest camera, you can do the fanciest camera moves, you can have the best actors in the world in your show. None of that matters if you're telling a story that nobody wants to watch and a story that's boring to people. So you need to tell a story that matters. And it could matter to you. If it's your story and it's personal, that's great. But if you want a whole bunch of people to see it, it's got to matter to a whole bunch of people. And so that's sort of the advice there is tell a good story. That's the key. And I can see a $1 million film and I love it as much as I love the last Star Wars, you know? And so the money doesn't matter. As long as the story is good, that's what you're going to love. I mean, look at all these big movies that put out all the effects and do 200 million movies and everyone goes, that sucked. You know, it doesn't suck because their effects were bad. Their effects were fantastic. You know, the production design was great. They had every A-list actor in the movie, but you know what? The story sucked. You know, there was nothing in that story that I loved. I wasn't on the edge of my seat. I didn't care about anybody. I want to care about the character. So again, it's a long-winded answer, but quite honestly, tell a good story. Tell a good story and people will watch it and people will love it and give you the opportunity to tell another good story. And that's
I've always been real big about original storytelling, even off of, because I'm not how can I say this? I'm not a big fan of reboots. I mean, again, I came up in the era during the 70s, 80s, 90s, where it was a lot of original storytelling. Wasn't that many reboots, remakes, and there are more reboots and remakes now. And I just feel that the art of being able to tell original stories, or even be able to tell stories that takes place within that universe that's original, without considering it as a reboot or retelling and all. And I think the creativity, I think sometimes in my viewpoint, I think that's what certain producers are afraid of. They're like, well, it's got to be like this because this was making so much money.
That's right.
You know,
and look, you've also got to remember too, as much as people love this as an art form, and it is, you know, what we do, I think, as an art form, making movies and making television. At the end of the day, it's also a business. It's a lot of money. I mean, no one's pulling money out of their pocket to do these things, you know. Well, some people are, but not everybody. And so most of it's a corporation. It's a bunch of suits that run it just like they run, you know, Walmart and Google. I mean, it's a bunch of suits that want money for their money. They don't want to put $100 million to lose money. That's not the point. They don't want to put $100 million to make a good movie that they like. They don't care. They want a movie that makes money. So that's part of the problem right there. And a lot of the independent movies aren't money makers. And so, you know, and now that's all changing anyways, because the film industry is really at a very sort of crucial point right now. And a lot of it's going, like, as you can see, you're watching movies that would have been in the theater last year. Now they're all on streaming. So that's all kind of changing a little bit. So there's a different demand for different kinds of movies. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's a business. And it's, again, you got to find your niche, and it's not easy to do. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And one of the greatest examples is that I think it was in the Robert Altman book, because I love reading books about directors and filmmakers. And I think it was in his book, he was saying, if you tried to sell a space movie before Star Wars came out, they would laugh you out of the room in Hollywood. After Star Wars came out, if you tried to sell any other kind of movie, but a space movie, they would laugh you out of the room. Because that's how Hollywood works. No one wants to take the chance. When someone takes a chance and they're successful, then they wanted, so everyone wanted to do space movies after Star Wars. And a whole bunch of bad ones came out because they were all trying to do Star Wars. Before that, you couldn't sell a space movie. Then after that, that's all they wanted. So it's this weird combination. And as far as reboots go, look, I'm not crazy about remaking movies. Like, I wasn't crazy about the fact that they did Point Break, one of my favorite all-time movies. And don't go doing Point Break. Point Break is an amazing movie, super original for its time, did stuff that no one else did. Don't remake that movie, because if you do, it's going to be a failure, and that's exactly what happened. So now if you want to do a reboot like 21 Jump Street, I'm into that, because you got that show that was really serious about these young cops, and you kind of made it funny, and you took your own spin on it. And That's good. I don't mind that. And that works sometimes, and sometimes it didn't. It didn't work with Chips, but it worked with 21 Jump Street. So, and part of that is, especially movies and especially trying to get people in the theaters, they need something that gets people in. I mean, think about it. They're making movies about toys and board games. Transformers was a toy, but it had a connection to get people into the theater, which was, oh my God, I remember my Transformers. I love playing with those things. Now I can see them come to life. I'm going. So it's like, they'll do anything to get you into the theater. When you start with a completely original idea, you're in trouble because there's no connection for the audience. And so now you have to do tons of publicity to make it the movie that people want to see, But then most of those movies become the movie that people want to see because the stories are really good. That's why people go back. That's why it gets good word of mouth. It's not because you did a lot of advertising. It's because people said, oh my God, you got to see E.T. E.T. is incredible. You got to see this movie. You got to see Top Gun. I mean, it's its own thing. And all those movies you're talking about, those are all my favorite movies. If you look at my favorite list, which is now up to 175 movies, by the way. It started at 10. It's 175. Because they all have their own space. I can't compare E.T. to Top Gun. Those are two completely different movies, but in their space, they're the best. So it's the same thing for me. I can't make a list of 10 movies. It's impossible for me to do because I tried and I got 175. So those are the movies I love. Almost every one of my movies, when you see my list, you go, that was kind of the first movie that did that. That was the first movie. Godfather wasn't the first gangster movie. There were hundreds of gangsters movies before Godfather, but it's the first one that did something different, that made the gangsters real people. They were cooking spaghetti. They cared about their kids. They were going to weddings. That was the first movie that did that. And so you're not making the first gangster movie, but you're making the first movie that's different than other gangster movies. And so, that's a part of it. That's a part of what filmmaking is. So yeah, the reboots, not a fan. I don't want to see, I got a script for Logan's Run. Great sci-fi movie, fantastic. Don't remake it. It was great. And when you look at it now, it's dated. The costumes look silly. The effects are horrible, but it's still a cool idea. The idea was what made that movie great. Don't remake it. Don't remake Logan's Run, please. Don't even bother. Okay, just leave it alone. And so, no, I don't want to. I like original. I like to see something that I haven't seen before. I like to see something where I'm on the edge of my seat or I'm totally invested. And to me, my biggest test is I'm a filmmaker. The second I start thinking, oh, that was a good shot. Oh yeah, look at, there's a microphone there, or there's a little thing with their wardrobe. When I'm worrying about all that stuff, you don't got me. You're not telling a story that's got me engaged. And I start noticing all the things I shouldn't be noticing. And so, and looking at my watch, that's a problem. I want to be engaged. I want to come in, you give me characters I love, and within that 2-hour spot, if you kill them, I'm gonna be crying. So that's not an easy thing to do, as you can see. It's tough to get those movies out there again. So how we do it, I wish I had an answer to that, but I don't.
You know what? That was a good answer. It's honest. And I mean, I think that's some of the things that a lot of upcoming filmmakers want to hear. Sometimes we need to hear that because it reminds us of what needs to be done as far as our storytelling, as well as being able to get the story out there, but being able to do it in a way where it's going to grab the person's attention.
Right.
At the same token, not drag the story along. At the same time, it's got you boom, boom,
Sure.
boom, where you want to come back and rewatch it. Because
yes.
Like I have for me personally, like you, I have a list of films that, like The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, but when as a kid, I saw the black and white, the original, which scared the hell out of me as a kid. But then when I saw John Carpenter's, it took a whole different spin on it.
But yeah, that's a good remake. That's doing it right.
Exactly. And so, again, for me, it's got to be something that gets, like you said, grabs your attention and makes you just say, and to me, it's a matter of the replay value. Mm-hmm. Is it a film that I want to go back and rewatch over and over again? Because I never go tired of these movies. And so I have a list of films that I love rewatching no matter how many times. It could be horror, action,
We'll compare our lists at some point.
Yeah, we gotta do that. We gotta do an episode where
that's my thing too. Every on that list I can watch a million times. I can watch it 3 times in a row and I'll never get tired of it. I know the lines, I know what's gonna happen, but the storytelling is so good I never get tired of it. And sometimes I'm still tearing up. I'm like, dude, you know what's gonna happen. What are you tearing up for? Because it still gets me. You know, they still get me. They're so good. The filmmakers I love are just great at making movies. They know what works. Spielberg is absolutely one of my favorite. Danny Boyle, love. You know, Scorsese, love. You know, and look, I don't love every one of their movies. I love almost all of Spielberg's, but there's about 4 or 5 not my favorite. Right. But still, I'm going to go see their movies right away because I know they're going to tell cool stories, and they're great. Those guys, the better than anything else, they tell great stories. They know how to tell stories. They know how to do a middle, you know, beginning, middle, and ending, and they're just good at it. And so that's what I want to do with my 2 hours. I want to watch those. I also watch everything else. I mean, I watch about a movie a day, basically. I watch more now. Now in isolation, I watch more. I think. Let's see if I remember this right. Yeah, I think at day 100 of isolation, I think I was up to 480 movies for the year.
Wow. And you know what? And I just picked up because I loved it. You know, again as a teenager, picked up Prince of Darkness. I just watched it last night. I mean, and that's one thing. My Blu-ray collection has grown like immensely since the last. Since we've been on lockdown? Yeah. So I'm like, oh, wow. I also look at it when I'm watching these films, like I said, my list of films, and I'm watching it and I'm sitting back like, okay, The Thing. And I'm like, beginning, middle, end. Dog arrives to, after these guys are after this dog. Middle, all the people in your camp is missing or something has happened where they're infected. The Resolve. They got to find out who this alien is. And so, I mean, I'm just using it as a raw example, but the idea is when I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, beginning, middle, end. And so that's how I approach all my films when I'm watching it. Can I be able to explain it if it was someone who said, okay, tell me about the film. Tell me, you know, without revealing anything. So,
but don't forget one thing, because you're talking about the plot more than anything else, and the characters are the most important thing. So here's, you know, how I would describe that, and I wouldn't leave out, is the fact that here are these guys that are a team, they're isolated, they rely on each other, but a problem has come into their lives where suddenly they're not relying on each other and they're turning on each other. And so what happens to the human spirit? What happens to people when you give them this problem? Almost every movie in the world has the same thing. Here are these people, they have a great life going, and now this happens. You know, here's these people, you know, The Godfather. They've got a great life. They've got the mafia thing going. It's going great. But now there's drug dealers coming in, and it's changing the whole world of crime. And now it's like about the sons coming up, and what are they doing? How does that family dynamic work? So it's always about the people. And that's the key. And if you look at the Orville, let's go back to the Orville. What's fantastic about Seth and the way he writes is you now know these characters, you know Bortus, you know all these characters, you know the Dr. Finn and her family, and that's what you're there to watch. And I've always said that about 24. Is like, yeah, you got all the action, yeah, you got all the excitement and all of that and all the plot twists, but you're going back because you want to see Jack Bauer, you care about his family, you want to see the president, you care about his family, and what decisions he makes that's going to turn his family off and turn his family against him, and how he deals with that, and what decisions that Jack makes that's going to turn his daughter against him. That's the important part. And that's what you got to remember about anything you do. If it's a 5-minute short to a 2-hour epic that you're going to spend all your money on, if you don't keep the people part of it, and all those movies that you love, go back and look at them like that. Look at them from the people point of view. And yeah, you know, Top Gun is about the guns and the not the guns, but the planes and how cool it is, and everyone looks cool. But break down what that story is about this young man and how he's, you know, how his quest for being the best killed his best friend, and how he's dealing with all of that. That's really what the story is about. All the other stuff is great and it's fantastic and it makes you want to go see the movie. But at the end of the day, it's the characters that keep you there. It's the characters that keep you watching 24. It's the characters that you love, and you're dying to see what happens the next time they land on a planet to these characters. That's why you're watching the show.
Well, it's funny because even with me working on a planetary step, and it was funny, ironically, that you mentioned that, because today I just sent my my writers like the story arc of all the characters, the main cast, and their story arcs throughout season 1. And it's funny because each character, some have a bigger arc than others, and they're dealing with it's the human factor, as I call it, the human factor. And so it's funny that you mentioned that, because again, it's all about can you relate to the character? Do you have feelings for the character? Can you feel for that character in the movie, whether you hate that character? If you can hate a character and the actor brings that character to life and to a point where you can't stand that character, then they did a good job.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
so did the writers, by the way, to write that character.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Without a question. Yeah. Without a question. And the thing is that like whether it's a TV show, like I use Lovecraft Country. I just finished watching the latest episode, and again, it's this one character I'm just like, oh, I can't say. And then you're like, okay, I get a better understanding about his background, why he was, and I got teary-eyed on a certain scene, and I was like, wow. Okay, now I look at them in a different fashion, because it's the way they're telling the story. They're giving the human factor.
And that's good storytelling. If you remember Chappelle was like the guy that ran CTU for 24.
Right.
And we made up the story where the bad guy said, you got to kill him. If you don't kill him, I'm going to poison all these people.
Right. And
by the time we finished that episode, by the time we killed Chappelle, people were crying that we killed Chappelle. And you hated this guy.
Yeah.
And the actor did a great job playing that part. But basically, we introduced this guy in a way that you hated. By the time you had to kill him, you felt really bad that you had to kill him. George was the same thing. Xander just played such an amazing job with that character. And by the time, he decided to get in that plane and commit suicide so the whole world doesn't die, or all of LA doesn't die with the nuclear bomb, it was a crazy story. But you hated this guy. He was such a pain in the ass. But by the time he died, you went to see, you knew he was going to die. He saw his son. They were estranged. By the time we did all that, you went, oh, geez, I don't want this guy to die. 3 episodes ago, I couldn't stand this guy. Now I don't want him to die, because everyone's human. And those are the best storytelling.
Yeah.
And, we were always proud on 24 that we kind of made our villains as real as they could be. They were a bit James Bondy. They were trying to, do these crazy, wild, blow up LA things, kill everybody. But there was always a side to them. They had family. We introduced like families to these, these horrible villains, and you realize, okay, but they have a reason. I might not believe in it, but there's you start to understand them a little more. And look, the key to the defeating enemies is trying to understand them as opposed to just making an enemy. And so that's all part of it. So any of that human experience that you could put in there, that's what people connect to. That's what people connect to. And some people do it, and some people bring their own world into it. I mean, if you look at E.T., that was Spielberg's life. He came from a dysfunctional family. He didn't have a father, and that was an exact family that he set up. And he hid in the world of fantasy when he was a kid, in comic books and stuff. And so that world that kept him alive became E.T. That became all that stuff that, kept him going as a kid became E.T. So it's truly his life story, but just crafted in a way that's really fantastical and everyone can understand. If he did his true life story, you'd be bored out of your skull, because it's like everybody else's life story, and it's boring, and it's a kid, and, as horrible as that may be, it's just about a kid that feels disenfranchised because he doesn't have a father, and there's a whole bunch of families like that. Right. But because he made it fantastical, he tells the exact same kind of story, but makes it in a way that gives it a broader audience, and they still get the same out of it. So it's the same thing. You want to tell your story, you got to start thinking right away, who wants to see this story? It's kind of boring. Maybe I can get the same elements of that story and the same things that humans are feeling, that I'm feeling, and get those feelings and put them in a story that people are going to attach to a little more, and then my message still gets across. So that's part of it too.
Well, and it's the same way with even with the Orville, like I said, like season 1 was, again, there were some really like moments where you were just like, you know, you were taken back because the way the story was being told, and especially with season 2, with the doctor's relationship, and you know, it was a lot of moments on the Orville in season 2 that really just kind of like took you back, like wow. And so, and it really made you more sympathetic to characters, and dealing with certain topics that, and it was done in a way where it wasn't jamming down your throat, but it was subtle. It was just coming off subtle, and it would make you think and talk about it afterwards, you know. And I think that's crucial, and I think that's important in storytelling also, where you want to be able to have a discussion. You want to be able to talk about it because it affected you on a level, on an emotional level, where you really felt something from it. And like you said, that comes back to good writing, and be able to tell good stories. Jon, again, I want to thank you. We got to bring you back.
We can probably sit here and talk forever, right?
Yeah.
Look, we're talking movies. Can I do one plug, though? I need to do one plug.
Jon, it's all about you, man.
There's an app online called Letterboxd. There's an app online called Letterboxd.
Okay.
And if you're a movie fan, it is the ultimate app. And I'm going to show you what it is. So basically, what it is you can keep track of all the movies you've seen ever in your life, which is already kind of cool. But basically, what it is, and it does it with posters. So, and you can make lists. So here's mine. Okay, so here's some of the lists I put together. And if you click on any of them, so these are every single movie I've seen in 2020.
Wow.
Okay,
and it's called,
January right up till now.
And what's the link called again?
It's a really fun thing. And then you could follow people. So you can go to my Letterboxd and follow Jon Cassar, and I got my favorite movies, all the movies I've seen this year, movies I saw when I was 13 because I made a list. And so, first of all, if you're a list person, this is your thing. And if you're a movie fan, it's great because at any point, you can also click on a movie and it gives you like all the background, and here's the best part. And then you click over here and it tells you all the places you can see it, right? So now I've clicked on a movie, I want to see a movie, and it'll tell you it's on Netflix, it's on Hulu, it's where you can get it. So when you're looking for a movie, there's nothing better than Letterboxd because you can click on anybody's movies. And then, you know, Edgar Wright, the director, he's got the 1,000 movies you have to see. There's like the top films from like Sight and Sound, a big magazine. There's like all sorts of lists that you can go on there and have the time. There's the best animation movies ever made, the best documentaries ever made. And then you're going to get on there and I get to look at your list and say, what movies are you watching? And maybe I'll watch one of them. So it's a really fun thing and you got to try it. It's called Letterboxd, B-O-X-D. Okay? B-O-X-D, Letterboxd.
Yeah, because I just punched it up on my phone.
Person, it's the bomb.
Yeah, I just got the app. I'm about to install the app on my phone.
Look me up and you can see the 175 films that you've got to see before you die.
Well, I saw 1917, so when I saw yours on there, I was like, okay, yeah, love that movie too. So Jon, thank you so much for coming on. We're definitely going to be bringing you back. We love the fact that you were very honest and you're very open about everything that's going on. And again, we got to bring you back on. Is there anything that you want to say to the fans out there that are tuned in right now watching?
Well, look, we do it for you. We always do. We bring you up all the time. You know, I mean, Seth and I say it all the time. We'll shoot a scene, we'll do a shot, and we'll actually say, the fans are going to love this. So we are thinking about you. I always have. That's how I make my television and movies. I think about the fans. And so, especially you guys, I mean, I think we have the best fans of any television show, personally. But you guys have been behind us all the time, and we are not going to let you down when you see season 3. I promise you that.
Well, Jon, thank you so much for coming on the show. And everyone has tuned in. I want to give a special shout out to all the Orville fan clubs, fan sites, fans, everything that's Orville related. Or Eagle Test and Fun Time, Orville Nation, Orville Family, Orville 24/7, Orville Podcast, and so many more. Everyone, if you like what you see, hit subscribe, hit like, tell your friends, tell your family, and tune in for a new episode next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as I always end my episodes, make every step you take a planetary one. We'll see you next week.